Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is Kian Jabour and as usual I am your host this evening. I have with me Mr. Timothy Jonas, who...
How are you, Kian?
I'm excellent. Have you fully recovered yet?
Oh yes, 100%.
Oh, well that makes one of us. I'm in horrific pain every day, but I think...
I'm sorry, I suspect you're going to take a little while to recover.
Yeah, the doctor said about 6 weeks, but all in the fun. But we still have, the show must go on, as they say.
Of course.
All right.
Course. Lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about. And this evening, guys, we are going to be discussing the cash grants that have been rolled out. And then Tim especially requested that we have a specific chat about what is going on in the police force at the moment with the Assistant Commissioner, Calvin Brutus, and the allegations against him. So we're going to have a little chat about the grant, the handouts, the cash handouts that were announced. So I'm going to ask the operator to please bring up the announcement. The government has decided that they are going to be handing out $100,000 to every citizen wait a second. Sorry. No, this is an old one. This was from 3 days previous. This is the $200,000 that they were giving every household. They had changed their mind. So operator, can you bring up the newer one, please? Since that one. Instead of the one-off cash grant of $200,000, each citizen will now receive $100,000. And this will be for persons over 18 years old. So what is interesting about this situation? So let's I think we should take it as chronologically as possible. So the first thing was we heard an announcement a week before it happened that the president will be going into parliament and he will be addressing all parliamentarians and Guyana from that platform, and he will be making big announcements based on the cost of living crisis that the country is going through. Those were the exact words 1 week previous to the $200,000 announcement. So the government of Guyana knew what they were coming to announce. The PPP government knew that they were coming to parliament to make these big announcements, being $200,000 to each household. Big fanfare. They showed up, cameras rolling, they had a carpet laid out, all the fanfare you can imagine, all the bells and whistles. And he stood up in that platform in parliament and he said to all of this country, we will be giving $200,000 to every household. Now, he made another announcement which was free UG, and then I think he announced that public servants were not going to earn less than $100,000. So we'll get to those two. But let's focus on the $200,000 per household. That was all the information we were given. We were
told there was not a budget, but we were told that this would involve about 60 billion Guyana.
Ah, correct.
Which is about $300 million US.
About $300 million US. That's right. We were told, well, I mean, the calculation was fairly basic. I think they said that it was 300,000 households, and that's how they came up with their calculation. Other than that, though, correct me if I'm wrong, we have no other information.
No, that was all the information we had.
We don't know what a household meant.
Well, we discussed that last week. There's no such thing as a household. And there's so many variables that the thing is impossible and completely prone to corruption and to being undermined so that kickbacks are possible.
Perfect. And then I had questioned where the money was coming from and how it was going to be distributed, which was, well, the government is known for their envelopes of cash. And then accountability obviously arose. Well, obviously from what is a household to how it's being handed out. I mean, all in all, accountability was the main question.
Well, yeah, the example that we gave last week, which I think no one has challenged and no one can really argue against, is that if I'm delegated to go and hand out this $200,000 per household on the block where you live in, and I go and knock on your door to find out if this is a household, and you say to me, look, I'm living upstairs, my big son is living downstairs, my cousin is living in the back downstairs, and I want you treated as 3 households because they're all big people, even though they're all in my house. I could then say to you, yes, I agree, my friend Kian, you have 3 households here, and therefore you get $600,000, but you got to give me back $150,000 for me, So at the end of the day, instead of getting 200,000, which you should get, you'll get 450,000, and I get a 150 kickback, and that's the first house I've gone to.
Right.
I get to go to 300,000 more houses after that.
Good. Well. Let's not dwell too much on this, okay?
Before you go on,
ahead.
because there was such a hue and cry on social media, and the humor that Guyanese found in this policy was so obvious that it had to be changed, and the government very quickly changed it. But there are a couple of things I need to say to put this in context. Before 2020, there was a hue and cry when accidentally the information was made public that the ministers of government had signed a deal with Exxon and had received an $18 million signing bonus. And that was unforgivable. Trying to hide that, trying to secret that away so that nobody knows about it. And that was something that definitely created a black mark against that government to show that the government was prone to secretive dealings, did not like transparency, and was prone to be corrupt. Fine. We are not dealing with $18 million here. You multiply 18 million by 10, you're going to get 180 million.
Yeah.
We're talking about $300 million. So we got to look at it in context, because the truth is that when you start talking about those huge sums of money, it isn't real anymore. But I want people to understand it is real. And it's not 18 million. It's not 100 million. If our leaders are given access to 300 million United States dollars in a country where their public servants are earning 500 or 600 United States dollars a month. If they have access to that kind of money, you would expect any competent leadership to come up with a fiscally responsible system that is transparent to spend that money and apply it where it's needed. You would expect that. I mean, if in any commercial business, the leadership went to say, we are giving money to a household, they should all be fired. All the management should be fired right away, because that would be such a nonsensical program. It could never withstand scrutiny. But that's what we're having here.
Right.
And it wasn't done casually. You see, this wasn't just a shout, a campaign promise or something. Cabinet had to have met to discuss this. Now, Cabinet is our ministers, our leaders. And they put in black and white, after all of those intelligent people had this discussion, they put in black and white in writing, with all the bells and whistles, with all the formalities, to send our president, God bless him, to Parliament, to stand up before Parliament and say to Parliament on national TV proudly, we are spending $60 billion and will not be able to have a clue where that money's gone after it's done, because we don't know what a household is. No, that wasn't ad hoc. That wasn't informal. That wasn't spontaneous. That was a planned and deliberate policy decision that boggles the mind.
They, over a week before they announced that they're having this conversation, that they're bringing this up.
When every single Guyanese with half a brain cell began to point out that this thing can't work and why it can't work and what is a household, and when you saw videos of a man standing up in a half-finished building with no roof saying this is his household, he lives here in a big empty lot, it began to be obvious to everybody that this couldn't be defended and you had to change. So I know you want to talk about the new policy.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up, because it leads right into the conversation. So very quickly, after all the fanfare of 200,000 per household, within the next few days, the government then retracted what they stated and said, we've thought about it, instead of, and again, through another presidential address, all right, we've thought about it, and we've decided that it's better if we give each citizen over 18 years old that has a valid passport or a valid ID card will get $100,000. Again, full stop on the information. Full stop. Here's I just want to throw this one out as a kicker. This wasn't a situation where where the president came back on screen and said, you know what, guys, we thought about it and we can save some money. This is a situation where he has now decided that they are going to spend at least $5 billion more with his new plan days after his previous announcement. And again, thrown into the wind, zero research, zero conversation on how they came to these numbers, zero conversation on the methodology, zero conversation on accountability, just nothing else. We are right there. Okay? $100,000 to every single Guyanese that has a valid ID card or passport. That's it. That's all the president announced.
It's amazing. It's like a child in a candy shop. You've got so much free oil money. You just don't know what to do with it. And you don't have any idea, any plan, any mature program. And nobody seems to be thinking.
Right.
So the first question that needs to be asked, first of all, it is a commendable policy to try to find a way to get this money to the people who need it.
Okay.
So let us start our policy. Let's have the conversation that Cabinet should have had.
Okay.
We need to find a way to take this money, the $60 billion. I know the money's gone up because it's free oil money and there's so much out there, but let's play with $60 billion, 300 million US. We need to find a way to get this money to Guyanese who are in need. Not rich Guyanese who already got plenty money. Not upwardly mobile professional Guyanese who already got a good income. We got to find a way to get this money to the Guyanese who are in need, who are at the bottom of the economic ladder and need that help on a short-term, immediate-term basis until the systems that we are implementing holistically kick in and Guyanese begin to prosper generally. Right. So how do we take the $60 billion and get it to poor Guyanese who are deserving? That's the objective.
Okay.
Now, I hope there was that conversation in Parliament.
Right. So we've addressed the problem. We have decided, because the government, through this initiative, has already now admitted that Guyanese need help. There are Guyanese out there, I'm going to be honest with you, they've decided they're giving everybody this money, which means they've decided that everyone needs help.
Well, stop there, because we've just defeated the objective.
Agreed.
The objective is to give it to the Guyanese who need it the most.
Right. But what we've done instead...
So the other day I was speaking to a very prosperous businessman. I can't call his name, obviously. But I asked him, well, you're going to line up for your $100,000. And he laughed and he was sheepish. He immediately understood what I was saying. And his response was, well, I know I don't need it, but I guess I'll have to give it away. Now, I've seen a lot of PPP apologists on social media responding to me, because I've criticized this before, and saying, well, if you don't need it, don't get it. Or if you don't need it, get it and give it away.
Right.
That can't be a government policy. The government policy cannot be, we're giving everybody $100,000
if you don't need it.
In the hope that the rich people will give it to the poor people. If that's your government policy, you might as well go back to the households. Right? You might as well go back and follow Mr. Jagdio's attempt to say, man, if you got GPL bill in your name, you'll get you'll get.
That was last week. Yeah, that was the previous Thursday's conference, right? So the new one is different.
Let us agree. We have not solved the problem by giving $100,000 to every Guyanese, because there are more Guyanese out of Guyana than in Guyana.
Oh, that's a good conversation.
There are Guyanese who are wealthy.
Good.
There are Guyanese who are poor.
Good.
There are Guyanese who are so wealthy that they should be contributing rather than receiving. So as soon as you take $60 billion and you give everybody $100,000, you are guaranteeing that $40 billion of that has gone to people who don't need it.
Yeah.
You have to find the 200,000, 150,000 Guyanese at the bottom of the economic ladder and find out how to get the money to them as a system.
Good.
That's what you need to do. 100,000 to every Guyanese will not do it.
Good. No, so first issue right off the bat, because I can tell you, I have had so many messages from Guyanese abroad stating, so this sounds like a free trip back home for me. I could just arrive in Guyana with my passport or my ID card, and I can collect back my $500 US that I pay for this flight.
Let me go further. At least those are Guyanese who were born Guyanese.
Right.
You know, the parents of Guyanese, they've lived there through the hard days of Burnham and the hard days of Chedi Jagan. They've endured, or some of them migrated and are coming back.
Good.
But we got Guyanese. Do you remember Baishanlin? The disaster of
All of them who got
Baishanlin.
passports. It's true. I plenty passports for you.
This government has been given citizenship
That's right, actually.
to nationals from China and Malaysia and all over the place.
That's true.
Who come in here, get the citizenship so that they can buy mining claims. Small and medium sized. All of them now getting $100,000 Kian, because they all now have passports. The head of Baishanlin, Sue, Mr. Jagdio's neighbor and friend. They are naturalized Guyanese.
Agreed.
They are getting $100,000. They're entitled to go and line up.
Yeah.
Is that the policy that a thought out, deliberate, calm, rational, competent cabinet has come up as the plan B after plan A, the household has been thrown aside, as it's so obviously defined?
Good.
Is that what we're doing?
Well,
it would offend me to stand up next to the head of Baishanlin and say he must get 100,000 because I must get 100,000. Because I'm sorry, I lived in Guyana through Burnham, I lived through the hard times, and now we got some money. I really think that money should go to Guyanese who need it the most, and not to the head of Baishan.
What's going to get even more interesting is, let's say they decide they're going to come out with a stipulation that says only residents of Guyana. Let's try to narrow this down. Again, you asked to have the conversation like cabinet.
In much the same way as Mr. Jagdeo said, man, we can rely on GPL bills. They are now saying if you have an ID or a passport.
Right.
Here's the ironic thing. The people at the bottom of our economic ladder, the people who are
I know where you're going with this,
who are living in little shacks all around the place in town, or are living in the urban areas. They are born, they grew up, they do not have an ID, and they never left Guyana. They
don't have a passport.
They don't have a passport.
That's right.
So the people who need it the most, you will find often, do not have an ID or a passport. So now, I guess, they got to go and line up 5 o'clock in the morning outside the passport office, which can only accommodate, I think, 150 applicants every day. And therefore, you got to pay money to jump the line. So, or you got to go for a national ID.
Maybe a worldwide investment.
That's only issued periodically. I don't think that's issued on a systemic basis.
No.
So, what madness are we talking?
Agreed. All right. Let's stick a pin, because I think I think everyone out there, I'm going to tell you something, okay? I'm going to start off by saying, and I need everyone out there to understand this. We are only as strong as a nation as is the weakest in our society. Okay? The country is only as strong as its weakest people. Okay? As our most vulnerable people. So when you sit there and you tell yourself, well, I need this money and this is a great decision, you have to, at some point in time, this thing really bothered me. You have to, at some point in time, think to yourself, is everyone being helped correctly, equitably, equally in this scenario? And you just pointed out one instance, again, more than one instance, because you're talking about the overseas residents, you're talking about the Baishanlin, or you're talking about those without ID cards or passports. Are they all being helped equally? And we can already see that people like Baishan Lindem got all the documents in order, and they will be collecting money before the poorest of the poor. So right off the bat, you know that this system is flawed. Now,
but I haven't heard anywhere that there is part of the policy that it has to be a Guyanese resident.
No, never mentioned. Has not been mentioned yet.
Even if we did an equivalent and said equivalent to the GPL bill, okay, you got to be a Guyanese resident. There is no register of Guyanese who are resident.
Correct.
Half Guyanese in this country who are adult, they don't register for GRA to pay PAYE, to pay the income tax. They don't register with the NIS.
Yep.
And therefore, how do you prove that you are resident and you are not resident?
Exactly.
There's no register.
Exactly.
It's exactly
or
the same.
Or an 18-year-old who has no assets in their name, no nothing. How are you proving anything?
But you got Guyanese residents abroad who have assets.
Who got property, who have everything.
There is no way to distinguish the sheep from the goats if you try to impose some kind of artificial foolishness that you must be a Guyanese resident.
Yeah.
You do not have that register. The same thing as giving cash grants to farmers or to fishermen. You don't know who they are. It is susceptible to corruption.
Good.
And I'm saying all of this because there needs to be a system, and we are advocating for the system, and I know we're going to talk about it, but there must be a system.
Yeah. We're gonna get to the suggestion on how do we get the money to the most vulnerable in a minute. I think it's just important that we point out the flaws, and I have to make the call out, Tim. It's not a call out. It's something I was leading up to just now. It's something that really, really bothers you, especially somebody in my position, that when I put something out, you know, my profile is very public. I am an activist, you know, a politician. You know, people do respond. And I put out a scenario, a conversation that somebody had sent to me, just somebody that was ranting, that was basically saying, listen, I don't need the money. But I cannot imagine that this money being given to people like me is what's best for the weakest people in this country. And they said this is a really poor idea, because it's identical to what you just said. And the response, let me tell you, it wasn't even from PPP supporters alone, and this is what bothered me the most. I really got a chance to see how horribly poor, how destitute the average Guyanese is, that they will ignore every single one of these issues, will ignore all of the information, okay, that has these glaring flaws in it. I haven't even started in the conversation of whether or not this will be good for our economy, whether or not the 100,000 will change lives. We haven't even got into the impact it's going to have on the country yet. And these people have sat down there and they read this thing because the person said, oh, you know, I just think it's so terrible because I don't need the money. And all you're reading is, well, if you don't want to give it to me, basically the same thing as you.
And that can't be a government policy.
No, it can't be a government policy.
We need to discuss a government policy that is going to work.
But yes,
because cabinet obviously hasn't found one.
But I've taken one single small step back with stating, when you put something like this forward, the first question you have to ask is, what is the problem you are trying to solve here? Okay? Since this is your solution, that you're giving everybody $100,000, let's dissect it in reverse and say, well, what is the problem? Here's your first problem. Guyanese are suffering. Okay? Guyanese are poor. The average Guyanese, the half of 50%, actually, I think it was like 47% is what the UN number came out with the other day, or UNICEF or one of them. At least 47% of our population is in poverty. Okay, so right off the bat,
you've identified the problem.
We've identified the problem. Okay.
So how to get the money to that 47%?
How to get the money to that 47%? But I think
not to the other 53%, because if you take that same budgeted 60 billion, 300 million, and give half of that to the other 53 that don't need it, you have less money available for those people who really do need it. And the thing is, 100,000 sounds like a lot to those people, so they don't want to hear you criticize it. They want that.
They want the money, and they deserve it. It's their money. That's not even an argument.
But the point is that those same people need to understand that if we can devise a system that all of the money goes to who needs it the most, their money will double. It won't be 100,000, it'll be 200,000. And the wealthy businessmen, the wealthy academics and professionals that don't need it will not get.
Right.
But the people who really need it must get the entire thing.
Good.
I don't know why that's complicated.
No, it's because Tim, people, I've narrowed it down to people have just become so selfish in this country. I look at how they drive on the road, Tim. It's every man for himself out here, partner. And these people looking at this 100,000, they don't even need it. And they holler, nah, I gotta collect me money. And I sit there, y'all don't think about anybody else. And then you drive down any street, you go and stand up in any line for the bank or anywhere, and you hear and you feel the tension and the anger in people. And it's every man for himself in this country. It's just lawlessness and a society that is crumbling. You can look at these comments here. These people are so greedy.
And in fact, this is what I want to ask you about. Because what happens is that it's very easy for a politician who's looking for votes, elections next year. It's very easy to say, man, all this free money, giving everybody 100,000. But it's poor leadership. It's poor fiscal responsibility.
Absolutely.
Mismanagement of funds.
Absolutely.
I don't see a good result out of it.
No.
So sometimes, to be a good leader, to be someone who is doing what is best for the country, you have to step back and not make some superficial, shallow, unthought out promise. And you have to figure out a system that may not be as popular.
Yeah.
And the thing is that anybody who sits back to think about it must agree that the wealthy businessman who doesn't need the 100,000 surely will agree. And the people at the bottom who really need that money and are desperate for it and therefore don't want to hear any criticism of it will also agree that if that 60 billion can be directed only at the poor people who need it,
Yeah.
they will get a bigger chunk, each of them.
And the country will lift. Again, we are only stronger, as strong as our weakest people.
The benefit will go to them, and that is what we need. And it needs to be done as a system that is transparent.
It's so simple, but Tim, these PPP supporters in particular, they defend this. And I just want to talk about it on a very facade basis. Tim, it's $100,000. Anybody in this country right now, even the foreigners that come into this country, knows how expensive it is here. You hear the expats, the diplomats talking about how expensive it is. So you know that 100,000 ain't changing nobody's life. So right off the bat, you know that this 100,000 is not to alleviate anybody out of poverty. Okay, this is let me tell you, the only thing that's going to come of this is the prices for Christmas are going to raise, even God only knows how much higher, and in all the marketplaces and the supermarkets and the stores and so on. And in 1 month's time after this money is given out, we are back to square one, but with higher prices all over the country. And these people will be left just as poor, because we all know that nobody invests in $100,000 to change their life. Into what business? Into do what?
The other problem too, of course, is that when you look at the demographic that needs it the most, often they are single parents with many children, or they're living in a matriarchal system where daddy's gone and disappeared, and they're looking after children and grandchildren, but may only have one adult in the household.
Yeah.
So that one adult collects $100,000, and that's got to be budgeted for 4, 5, 6 children.
Yeah.
Whereas a professional who's single getting 100,000 and only looking after himself.
No, don't even worry with that. Or the two parents that got 3 adult children still living at home because their adult children are, is a nurse, so they still living at home, or as a professional, engineer or something, feel still living at home because they're now starting their careers, or you know what I mean, an accountant or a new lawyer still living at home. So now you got 2 parents living at home with 3 adult children getting $500,000, and the single mother with 3 children, all 6 years and under, getting $100,000. That's craziness.
Here's what I want to say to everyone who is willing to think about it and figure out intelligently how best to get this money to the people who need it the most.
Good.
You have unemployed people. You have people who are handicapped, who are invalids.
Elderly.
You have elderly people. You have mothers with children, and then you have people who have low-paying jobs,
right,
or part-time jobs. There is a national insurance scheme. The purpose of the national insurance scheme, which is created by an act and has an infrastructure that with some small changes can manage this. The purpose of the national insurance scheme is to help people with unemployment benefits, to help people with maternity benefits, to help people who are invalids. Nobody, when I say nobody, I'm sorry, let me not exaggerate. About half of the workforce registers for NIS. In the private sector, a lot of employers will not pay NIS for their employees. A lot of employees don't want to register for NIS because they don't want to make that contribution every month. We need to get them on the NIS. The way to get them on the NIS is to say, and this solves the Guyanese question, it solves the resident question, where instead of saying we're giving all Guyanese and talk foolishness about residents, you say, once you are registered for NIS, this is what is going to happen. So immediately everybody is motivated, they will go run and they will insist that their employer registers them for NIS. If you're earning under $150,000, not only do you not have to contribute to NIS, But we will pay, NIS will pay you a monthly sum of money to bring your net income to $150,000.
Yeah.
So if you're earning 100,000, NIS is going to pay you 50. If you're earning 130, NIS is going to pay you 20.
Yes.
As soon as you do that, everybody who registers for NIS is then on the radar. And that $60 billion is enough money to pay for all of them for the whole year.
Good. And I just want to make this clear. People keep I watching the nonsense. Well, what system would you put in place better? This system already exists. You have to legally, once you are employed, you have to legally work for NIS.
Yes.
Legally contribute.
You change the numbers, and you say that in the NIS, if you're earning less than whatever threshold we're fixing, we pay you every month. And that allows an amount of money to go to each individual based on need. They get more if they are poorer. If they're totally unemployed, they get even more. If they're an invalid, if they're old, if they got pension, if they got children, they get money for that. Right. So you create the system so that those at the bottom will receive the most benefit.
Yes.
And then the people who are earning $200,000, they contribute into NIS so that they are helping
put him back into the system.
Finance NIS in what it is supposed to be doing.
Good. And again, the unemployed are to be registered as well. You're registered as an unemployed.
There's suddenly no question as to if you're resident.
And you have to put your dependents on it as well.
There's no question if you're resident.
Absolutely. Simple.
You're already saying only Guyanese must get it, so I understand the
residence problem is solved.
Foreigners here.
Correct.
But they're not entitled.
Correct.
And in any event, you don't want to give a visa to a foreigner who's here to be unemployed or an invalid.
Yes, correct.
They got to go back where they come from, because our infrastructure must look after Guyanese.
And they must be contributing.
Free health or free education must be for Guyanese.
Yeah.
So you do it through the NIS. That way, the people who need it the most will get the money. Okay. And the more the need, the more money they will get on an individual basis.
Yeah.
And it's not because next year is election and we want votes. It is because that is your right.
Yeah,
You are Guyanese who are living here. The pensioners who got a line up. You remember there was a handout for pensioners? They had pensioners fainting in the line at the cultural center.
Yeah.
That kind of insensitivity, just to show that we're doing something, is...
But Tim, they're not caring about the systems. You're gonna hear all the conversation now going to change to say, well, these are the problems with doing it with NIS.
Well, I want to hear that. Because here's the thing about the system that we propose, Kian. If we propose a system and it's porous, it has flaws, then we discuss the flaws intelligently.
Yes, exactly. And move forward.
But to say, for anybody to say it is better to say $200,000 a household,
or $100,000 per
better
passport,
$100,000 per Guyanese.
That's craziness.
And then to say they prefer that to a system through the NIS where every month their income is subsidized up to a minimum amount.
Agreed.
For them to say that that's not as good, well, I'm sorry. Because if we are bringing everybody into the NIS, what will happen as we become more prosperous and upwardly mobile is less people will be earning a small amount.
Yeah.
More people will be earning more, but all of them suddenly are on the radar.
That's right.
So all of them are registered for NIS.
Yep. And then these social programs,
our objective,
absolutely.
If we have good leadership.
But not only that, you get statistics from this too. How much are people earning? How much? What's the cost of living that you need to fit into, because you're watching all the trends? How many people are unemployed? There's so much information that can be gathered just from this simple scenario.
Who is the employer? How many people is that employer employing?
Exactly.
And therefore, what's his income? And is he paying fair income tax?
Correct.
Income.
So much information.
You need as competent leadership to bring everybody into the system so that everything can be managed transparently.
Yeah.
Both PAYE, income tax, and NIS.
Yes.
And that way, you are able to ensure that you are giving help to the people at the bottom.
At the bottom. But you see, Tim, it's that simple. I'm going to say this again to everyone out there. This situation is a despicable mess. Okay, what they're doing here, I'm going to call it out as it is, they're buying votes. All right, where were they for the last 4 years when people been suffering? All right, and now all of a sudden we got $100,000, we got $60 billion to give away at a snap of a finger. That's a joke. This thing could have been set up through the NIS scheme, and all the citizens, the resident citizens here, could have gotten the money equitably. Okay? It is not rocket science. We're not dealing with millions of people here. We are dealing with hundreds of thousands of people, most of which are already registered with NIS to begin with. So all you need to do...
Well, actually, let me interrupt you. Most of them, I don't think we can say most of them are. Many of them are.
Many of them. You know what?
The public servants are.
Let's call it half.
But in the private sector,
good.
A lot of people stay under the radar.
But let's call it half. Let's say they still have 300,000 from 18 or over.
66%. Let's say 2/3.
Let's say 2/3.
It means that it is a smaller job, and the public interest in bringing everyone into the NIS is solved because they are motivated to come in. Those unemployed people, those low income
There's
people,
benefits now to get into the system.
because they know they get it every month.
Correct. So this is what we're trying to speak about now to everyone to understand. When you have a situation where the two options are a government employee that's paid $200,000 a month, wearing a backpack, walking down the road with tens of millions of dollars to give all his friends and family, whoever got a passport and a letter from the grandmother, their cousin overseas or whatever, and this money being haphazardly handed out and stolen, versus if the government really wanted to benefit the people, and more specifically the people that need it, there are systems like the NIS that within less than a year, this can be put in place. All Guyanese can get under the umbrella, and everyone can benefit equitably. It is not rocket science. So for all of we just call them not pretenders, we just call them sympathizers out there that are thinking that the PPP are doing this out of the goodness and it's great for the country. Well, at this point in time, half the money can be stolen. The other, then when people do the small percentage of, because we remember what happened with COVID. Sorry, just to back up, because up to now we didn't get the audit from the COVID grant or the agriculture grant or the fisherman grant or anything. Okay, school children grant. Up to now we get nothing yet, no audit yet. Nobody has any accountability for that money. So you know how much money is going to be stolen again. And then the economic impact of just throwing this amount of cash out. All right, what it's going to do for inflation, all the cost of living expenses are going to go through the roof. $100,000 is going to disappear like that for the few that have gotten it. And then we're back to square one. So in the long run, this has helped no Guyanese. Okay, the very few that can take their $100,000, you can't even buy 4 new tires with $100,000 on your car. Like, you get what I'm saying?
Well, you've just used an example that an upwardly mobile professional would be considering. Mm-hmm. The lady who's got 4 children she's looking after is not buying tires for a car. She's trying to find a way to feed her children, and they will walk to school or they'll catch a minibus and go to school, and she's really trying to find a way to rub 2 coins together. Yeah. She is going to look at $100,000 as a lot of money, and it is for her. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the inflation that will take place and the fact that prices probably won't go back down after she spent that $100,000, you need to find a sustainable way for her income to increase, but not everybody's. Good. And that will also help with the inflation problem. Because look, if you got a pensioner, and I think the pension now is what, $35,000, some princely, something like that. And you give them another 50, you give them the ceiling. So they immediately go up to 85 a month. Mm-hmm. For the price of 600,000 Guyana dollars, you have transformed that pensioner's life from 30-something thousand dollars to 80-something thousand dollars. Now, with a budget of $60 billion, you haven't even scratched that budget yet. Correct. Think about it. So do that through the NIS. Mm-hmm. And that pensioner who is now earning $85,000 is not going to cause inflation. Yeah. No shopkeeper is going to be able to raise the price of plantain. Good. Because he's saying, look, this pensioner who is earning 30 is now earning 80. Yeah. But if you flood the economy now with $60 billion handing out one off, you will have an inflation. Absolutely. So do it systemically. Do it in a way that is measured and continues month to month. Do it so a right is created, an entitlement is created among those pensioners, those mothers, those people at the bottom, that they know that they are registered for NIS, they are Guyanese, and they know that they will have this dignity for the rest of their lives.
Great.
Let's do something proper.
I'd like to just switch gears. We've touched on the inflation now. I just want to talk about the logistics of this money being given away for a second. Okay? I heard the Vice President Barajagi's press conference yesterday, in which he said they're trying to give away a lot of this money by check.
Well, I suspect he heard the social media commentary about cash.
Good. So the first question is, a check is still cash, okay? Because just to throw this one out there for you guys, when you give someone a check, it don't flutter around the place, okay? It has to be able to be cashed in a bank. So my first question is, and I said it last week, please show, let's say they're using Bank of Guyana. I would like for the government to justify where they have an account that's sitting down with 65 billion Guyana dollars cash in it that they can just give away, that they can just suck out of that banking system and not have an effect on anything. Okay, that's the first question. Where is 65 billion dollars in cash sitting? So if you don't have that much cash, then you got to print more money. Well, God forbid we even touch that basis. That would be horrific in any context. So hopefully they don't have to print more money. Now, let's say they give away the Bank of Guyana checks. They could go to a commercial bank and do it. My first question, as all of us do our banking, I know that there are times that people is going to banks in this country to withdraw a couple $1 million and the bank is watching, Mr. Partner, we ain't got much money right now. You got to come back tomorrow. You understand? So $65 billion out of the commercial banking system. I don't want to even discuss what kind of nightmare we're talking about there. All right. And hopefully the banks will have that conversation. And then now here's another one just for all the interesting, sympathizers out there. If you do it by check, well, now we got to get GRA involved. Now we got to get banking fees involved. So you ain't collecting your $100,000 anymore. Okay? Because is GRA about to write off your $100,000, decide that every single citizen in this country over 18 years old at filing taxes, give them $100,000 deductible and the capacity to even be able to do that? Or the reality is, half of these people can have 14 or 30% of this $100,000 disappearing from them like that.
I think that it can be done in a way that is tax-free. It can be done. Mm-hmm. The question will not arise if the money goes to the people that it should go to, because those people are below the tax threshold anyway. Mm-hmm. I'm deliberately using a sum like $150,000 because at that level you shouldn't be paying PAY.
You shouldn't be paying anything. You're in poverty.
Right.
Yeah.
So once you're below the threshold and the money is being given to bounce you up, then tax won't become relevant.
Yeah.
But I do believe that our pensioners, our mothers with children, the system has got to accommodate money for them, money for the unemployed, money for the invalids, not money for people like you and me, Kian.
Yeah, agreed. I agree.
And if the folk who are earning money, the upwardly mobile professionals, if they're not agreeing with that, if they're not seeing with that, well, then in my mind, I am not speaking to them at all in the first place. Yeah. Because I am really trying to direct what I'm saying to the people who can sit back and calmly and rationally think about it and try to devise solutions and policies that can work and improve on what I suggest, criticize what I suggest, but formulate something that can work because our government has demonstrated they can't do it for us.
Yeah.
And if we can propose something, a solution that can work, and I think the NIS is the solution, to pay it through the NIS system, that money goes into the NIS and then goes to the people at the bottom. You solve the problem. Agreed.
All right. I'm just going to end this because I know you want to talk about Brutus. We have some more time, but we're going to talk about the police, this whole scandal going on. But I'd like to say again, I think the key here, and I know education is an issue, I know party loyalty is an issue, I know that I'm reading the comments all the time, and these people are paid to come on here and just talk garbage and try to sway your opinion. But the truth is, what this government is doing is purchasing votes, and what they're doing is not fiscally responsible, and this is going to backfire by Christmas. Okay? And I'd like to say something on that note. To all Guyanese that think that we are not here to help, or we're here to just criticize. When the government announces that money is coming out, I'm making a wild stab in the dark here. I just want to recommend to all Guyanese out there to go as quickly as you possibly can and collect your 100,000 and cash that check. Go and get your money. If you got to take the day off a walk, if you got to take the week off a walk, because you ain't getting $100,000 a week to walk, go and collect your money as quickly as possible, because with what we have seen now, with the lack of planning, with the lack of analysis, again, I keep questioning, where did the $100,000 even come from? Why wasn't it $120,000? Why wasn't it $85,000? How did they even come up with that figure? Right? Why is it not $150,000 per person? And
because 100,000 sounds nice.
Sounds nice. So what we've realized,
if it was only 70,000, that sounds like a little bit, but 100.
Oh yeah. Look how much I'm doing for you.
Sounds nice.
So my advice to all of you out there is, I believe that this system, once they start handing out this money, which is going to be riddled with corruption and stealing and just lack of any kind of systemized distribution, collect your money as quickly as possible, because I believe the system will fail before all that money is handed out. So you be the first in line to go and collect your 100,000, because I don't know what's going to happen. Because when we try to rationally wrap our head around how this is going to work logistically, it doesn't make any sense. Where the money's coming from, how they're doing it, who they're giving it to, I don't understand. Are they walking up to every single house? Are they giving out checks? Are they giving it to cash? Is there one single place all 650,000 of us got to go and line up? You know what I mean? Like, which kind of checks are they giving? There's too much. There's too much. And then again, all the people who with passports, I get to my sister and my cousin and my auntie and my nephew to send them their passports, and I can get a letter that says I authorized to collect money for 7 of them. So I collect in 700, 800, including myself, $800,000 I go in and collect myself. So it is a logistic nightmare, and it is bullshit that they haven't thought through. Collect your money as quickly as possible, because I believe the system will fail a quarter way into handing this money out. Okay, that's my 2 cents to end on that topic. It's ridiculous. Let's jump into something that is really talking about accountability. We now have the police force of this country, the people that are in charge of upholding the laws of this land, the people that are in charge of walking around with them public servants that making $200,000 with a gun in their hand, with a backpack with $10 million in it. Those police that are set to protect that money are now riddled with a scandal in the police force, in which one of our top cops is being taken to court for fraud and embezzlement and having accounts with $500 million in it. And basically all hell has broken loose in the Guyana police force.
Well, let's say first of all, we don't know if it's true.
Good.
Okay.
Allegations.
Because
good.
Newsroom is breaking a lot of this information. I don't trust Newsroom. As you know, it's a government organization. I do know that Mr. Jagdeo has been reported as saying that they have files on the assistant commissioner, and now that he has taken them to court, well, information will come out. I was startled by that, because there are a couple things, and remember, I firmly believe our systems have to work. Mm-hmm. If you are the leadership in this country and you have information as to wrongdoing, and that's the inference I draw when he says we have files on this man. If you have information as to wrongdoing and you haven't acted on that information by reporting it to the authorities, you shouldn't be in a position of power. You are the wrong person.
You're an accomplice.
Yes. So I really want to say that if one of the signs of corruption, and it is something that we need to think about and avoid, is that I know something about you and you know something about me, and therefore both of us got to stay quiet.
Yeah.
And if you have information on people, it is leverage to keep them quiet. And it is a symptom of a corrupt society. If anybody in the leadership has information that there has been criminal activity, it is not for them to be quiet, it is for them to report it to the police authorities, who should act on it.
Right.
Now that in itself is a problem, because we now have to look at whether the police have the wherewithal to investigate their own. Mm-hmm. it's all well and good for a senior police officer to investigate ranks beneath him. But when an investigation now has to be done at the level of commissioners and assistant commissioners and deputy commissioners, who undertakes that task? What I know is that our respective governments, both PNC and PPP, have, while they're in power, done their best to exercise control over the police force by appointing, promoting, elevating, so that the personnel in the police force are loyal to them. They ensure that they promote the people loyal to them, appoint the people loyal to them. And there needs to be a police service commission that is independent, that is not appointed the majority by the government, so that it controls those appointments, so that the police becomes an autonomous, independent force. Look, when the PNC were in power, we saw Soku arrest Roger Luncheon and Winston Brassington and Ashni Singh. When the PPP came into power, we saw the same Soku with new personnel arresting all the PNC folk.
Jordan and etc. etc.
If that doesn't speak volumes to the Guyanese population as to whether the police force is an autonomous, independent body doing its job professionally, or whether they're subject to political direction, nothing will. And there is a major problem that will not be fixed unless the police force, and especially the people at the top, can be appointed in a way that they're independent, and that there is a system of oversight that is not political, that is not run by the politicians, that keeps them in check. Because let me tell you, you pass laws, and the laws appoint your leaders, and the laws rule the citizens. But you also have to have laws that rule the people who are the leaders and the police, to avoid them abusing their position of authority.
Correct.
And that is where we're falling down. We have some people who are above the law, who are immune. And it is a symptom of our corruption, and it needs to be fixed.
Absolutely. Tim, you couldn't have said it better. And what you realize quickly is this type of corruption that was in the police force that they're claiming they have files on, and this that are coming out in these court matters. You're realizing that this is not from this year. This isn't just started. So the question is, if this has been going on for years, this guy is alleged to have stolen $500 million in 9 different accounts. He didn't accumulate that in 1 year.
Well,
so where's the accountability? Where's the auditing?
What I see the newspapers reporting is that we're talking about gifts. And I want to say something about gifts, because I have seen paperwork, documents filed in court and that kind of thing, where businessmen are saying they put money in an envelope, 10,000 US in an envelope, and gave it as a gift as a wedding present.
Right.
And one police officer saying he collected a large sum of money from a businessman to pay for a wedding and that kind of thing. I want to talk about ethics. When the minibus driver is driving down the road and he sees the traffic cop and he gives the traffic cop $5,000, that gift buys him immunity. The next time he sees that traffic cop, the traffic cop will wave him by.
Yep.
He is now immune from that traffic cop. How is there possibly any difference between that traffic cop
and a wedding gift,
and then at the top, a much larger gift of $10,000, $2 million, another larger gift of $8.5 million? Those businessmen are immune. They have bought immunity. And the ethics of any responsible police force must, in the rule book, say you do not accept gifts from members of the public under any circumstance.
Politicians included in that. It's all over those laws are normal all over the world.
It's all over the world normal.
You can't give a Gucci belt. You can't give a new pair of shoes. You can't give cash gifts.
Now
it's illegal.
Let me remind you that in the last administration, one of the ministers was accused of receiving a gift from some gold bangle. His response at the time was he doesn't wear jewelry, and then there was a plethora of photographs of the gentleman wearing jewelry. And again, ethically, you do not accept gifts from members of the public. Would a judge accept a gift? If a judge can't accept a gift, how on earth does a policeman accept a gift, knowing that his job is to enforce the law against those same people, who are living in the society subject to the laws and may be breaking the laws to get ahead? Now, it's worse than that, you see, because we have a system. The foreigners, the ABC countries, managed to force our leaders to pass laws, anti-money laundering legislation that safeguards against cash that can't be explained. So this is how the system works. Let me tell you. Banks are required by anti-money laundering legislation to have what they call a compliance office, a compliance department. And there are certain activities among customers that trigger an alarm that goes straight to the compliance people. So if you see a large cash deposit, alarm triggered. If you see a large cash transfer in or out to the country, alarm is triggered. And the compliance people are obligated to report that suspicious activity to the Financial Intelligence Unit, the Financial Investigation Unit, the FIU, which is a police body. Of course, it is appointed by the politicians, should be autonomous, but that's how it is. The FIU then investigates, and if the FIU finds that there is something that is possibly illegal, they send the information to SOCU, the same SOCU that we're now worried about. And SOCU can go and get court orders, freeze the accounts, charge the people, that kind of thing. That system would work very well if the FIU is independent, and if SOCU is independent, and if there are professional bodies doing their jobs. But guess what? If you're a businessman who has paid $8 million or $2 million or $5 to anybody in the FIU or SOCU, and they get that report,
they're gone.
The report gets dumped. That is why the ethics of it is so important, that you do not accept gifts, because gift equal bribe, and bribe equal corruption. And corruption means people are buying immunity so that they are above the law. And if Guyanese don't understand that, we live in a society where it is astonishing that people can publicly say, I gave a gift to a policeman.
Or a politician. Yeah, absolutely. We're in a flaw. Guys, at that note, we are out of time here. So there is a conversation I want to have next week. Hopefully we can have it. It's about UG being free. I saw a comment on Facebook that said, within the next 4 years, Guyana's largest export are going to be educated citizens. And I thought,
in the next 4 years? Well, that's a crash course.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a very interesting comment, though, because it goes right back to the same cash transfer and the fact that these people will now be educated and can't work here because they can't earn a living or live a comfortable life or worry about security or raise children or buy a house. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
I look forward to it.
Because it's for the younger generation. Nonetheless, on that note, guys, the roads have been death. The roads have been deadly within the last week or so. So I'd like to tell everybody, we have a nice weekend coming up, and I think we have a short week, Diwali, but I think it's the weekend after. So I just wanted to tell everybody to please be very safe out there. Have a nice, calm weekend, and make sure you are driving defensively, and please look out for one another. I know I've just started preaching like a pastor soon. Care about your fellow man. Look out for your neighbor. Start to care about each other. Jeez. But guys, on that note, thank you guys for joining us. We will be back here next week. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Take care, y'all.